Welcome back to a new FPL video. In this video I'm going to run through my updated team draft with just under a week now to the FPL deadline, and we're going to see how things have changed, but also ways that it could change in the upcoming week. So let's get into the video. So let's start in goal, and we've got Verbruggen, and I have made the change from Matt Sells to Verbruggen. I've made the change from the £5 million goalkeeper to a £4.5 million goalkeeper, and I've changed my £4 million bench to a £4.5 million goalkeeper also. Verbruggen I'm starting with because I like his fixture against Fulham. A little bit overlooked, I haven't seen him mentioned too much, but he also has a mediocre, decent-ish sort of run at the start of the season, and he will also rotate pretty well with my bench goalkeeper. There is scope for me to change my bench goalkeeper to a 4 million to create more funds for the rest of the team, but that remains to be seen. But at the moment we're starting with Verbruggen in goal. Let's move on to the defence. So in this area I've kept it pretty similar. There has been one change in the starting lineup, but one person that does remain is Marc Cucurella for Chelsea. £6 million and looking like a really good option still. Chelsea have come back from pre-season and they are looking very impressive in their pre-season fixtures, still scoring for fun. And I'm hoping Marc Cucurella can sort of chip in with the odd assist and even the odd goal come the start of the season. And usually an ever-present. He's one of the bankers in that back line for Chelsea. So I'm more than happy to keep with him, even with the temptation of going with one of the big centre-backs, like a Virgil van Dijk, one of these £6 million centre-backs that might offer more in terms of defensive contributions. But I'm willing to back the attacking threat of Cucurella in this situation. Then next up is the first change I've made in the defence. It's Nico Williams in. I did have Mickey van der Ven to start with, but Nico Williams, I wanted to get in on the Forest defence still. They're still looking good in pre-season when it comes to the defensive structure. They're not shipping too many goals, and with selling or getting rid of Matt Sells in the goalkeeper position, I really wanted to invest in Forest somewhere. Now, there's still scope to change to a Murillo. He's 0.5 more, or Milenkovic of course, also 0.5 more. But Nico Williams at 0.5 less, a little bit more of an attacking threat, but he also does really well for defensive contributions like Murillo. Murillo is a defensive contributions monster. Milenkovic does well, but Nico Williams is quite similar in terms of defensive contributions to Milenkovic, even at the fullback position. So I'm willing to save the 0.5 and bank on Williams in this situation. Will my mind change come the start of the season? If I have the money, potentially, but I'm enjoying that saving at the moment. And if he can just carry on like he did last season, when the defensive contribution points weren't involved, and match Milenkovic, I think he could be a really useful asset. And in the final defensive position, we have Aaron Wan-Bissaka, which remains unchanged. At 4.5 million, I don't think the West Ham defence is particularly great, but I am looking at his defensive contribution points here, along with 30% of the FPL fan base. He's heavily owned, but playing in that wing-back role, I think he offers a good attacking threat, again like Nico Williams, in a good balance with defensive contribution points. Now, there is Juve on the other side who's been brought in, and his attacking numbers do look impressive, although in a much more of a minor league. But we don't know what his defensive contribution points will be like, so I'm not willing to go there just yet. I'll keep my eye open before the start of the season, but I feel like Wan-Bissaka is just that bit more nailed. And if somebody like Walker Peters comes off the bench, I think it's more likely he's going to come on actually on the left-hand side instead of Juve. So I'm sticking with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and we'll move on to the midfield. So the midfield is one area that I've remained unchanged for now. I've still got Morgan Rogers first up, 7 million, good value, decent fixtures to start, but he did pick up a knock last week in one of the pre-season games. He's missed the game this weekend, and now it's touch and go, but whether he's going to be fit for the start of the season. So he could be one that has to make way. I think we're just going to have to wait for more news this week in the press conferences leading up to next weekend. But Unai Emery believes it's not too serious, and they believe he should be available. But that might have to be a late decision for me and many other managers to make. Then moving on to Mo Salah, I've said my reluctancy to not bet against him on the opening day of the season. He is electric on that first day of the season. His returns are usually phenomenal and very consistent. So we've got him in at the moment, but at the time of recording, I have just watched the Palace game in the Community Shield against Liverpool, and there wasn't a lot of play going down that right hand side. It feels like there's been less of a reliance on Salah, and it certainly looked that way in pre-season at times as well. They've obviously got the option to go through the left with Gakpo, but now through the middle as well with Florian Wirtz. And is that going to have a negative effect on Salah's points? And now it's the first time in the whole of pre-season that I'm having my doubts on having Salah in my team, and whether I could drop him to a different midfielder, maybe a Wirtz, maybe somebody cheaper. Ismail Assar looked good in that game also. And then I could upgrade one of the attackers to an Erling Haaland. I could get him in, because I think the City fixtures are pretty favourable at the start of this season. So I'm toying with that idea now. But for now, he's still in the team. And then I think we'll just have to see what the week ahead holds. But I feel like it would be a bit gutsy of me to go against him on that opening day, as I've constantly preached how good he is. But anyway, let's move on to the next, and it's Omar Marmoush, who's also an ever-present in my drafts. Okay, if I did think of bringing in Erling Haaland, I might consider having Marmoush out the team, maybe moving him to a different sort of player. I wouldn't like to double up on the City attack just yet. Marmoush has felt like I wanted him because I wanted to be part of that City attack. If I haven't got Haaland, and you can't really pick or nail down any midfielder to start, it's difficult. But I've gone. That was the reason I have gone with Marmoush in this instance. I just think, like I said before, he's going to be on set pieces. I think he will be on a lot of set pieces now with Kevin De Bruyne gone. Free kicks in particular, and corners. Maybe not penalties, Erling Haaland will still have them, but free kicks and corners could well be his. And he did start the latest pre-season game, didn't score, but I'm still willing to back him. Then finally, like a lot of players, Iliman Ndiaye, 12.7% owned. Because of his price range, a little bit of an enabler. I don't really consider myself taking him out before the start of the season. Everton haven't looked fantastic, let's be honest. They've looked a little poor, but with Leeds in the opening fixture, I'd like to think he can get a return in that. He can do us all a favour. As I've said before, he is the flair player, I think, for Everton. And they're picking up a few signs. They've just got Kiernan Dewsbury Hall in. So this is beginning to bolster the midfield and offering a little bit of support from Ndiaye. So happy to stick with him for now, especially with him being on penalties. So let's move on to the attack. So the forward line is an area that's seen a little bit of change. Now, Dominic Solanke's dropped out, and I brought in Chris Wood, who was a big part of my success, shall we say, last year. Very consistent goal scorer. You can usually guarantee a good 10 goals at the very minimum. I think it was at 20 last season, at the very least anyway. He's coming for Solanke. As we all know, he's had his injury issues in pre-season, and I don't know if we're going to see him at all on that opening day for Spurs. So he's just become way too much of a risk. So bringing in Chris Wood there. Nottingham Forest themselves looking like they're struggling to score goals, which I don't completely like. So that's why I'm going to monitor Chris Wood for this week. I could change my mind on him yet, but the guy's on penalties. Quite often, if Forest score, he was involved, certainly last season. So I'm happy to keep him at the minimum as a placeholder just for now. And then moving on to the biggest change is probably Isak out, which probably was inevitable with everything that's gone on with the transfer saga from Newcastle to Liverpool. Seems a little bit frozen out at the moment, so while that uncertainty is there, there's just no point in putting him in your teams. So I brought in Watkins as it stands. Newcastle, who play Newcastle themselves, Aston Villa. I really fancy him to score in this game. Newcastle haven't looked brilliant defensively in pre-season. Aston Villa have been hit and miss themselves, but they've been scoring goals. And Watkins has been involved in a few in those pre-season games as well. Again, consistency season after season with Watkins, outscoring Haaland in the last 2 seasons. And a pretty friendly run of fixtures to start the season. I think he's a player that makes a lot of sense at the moment, unless you want to take a risk on somebody like a Gyökeres or Ekitike or even Sesko. But Watkins, we know what we're going to get, and that's why he's gone straight in for Isak for me. And then finally, João Pedro, no change there. He's still he's flying himself in pre-season. Now Chelsea have come back from their break after the Club World Cup. He was on fire there, and he's scored again over the weekend. But also Delap has come on and scored 2 goals himself. So I think João Pedro's minutes risk is very valid. There's a big chance he misses out, maybe in certain games, but certainly towards the end of games, maybe the last 20 minutes. But he's been starting these pre-season games, so it's probably looking like we're all predicting. He probably gets 70 minutes and then they bring Delap on. And then maybe they could start Delap in Champions League fixtures. You never know, it could be vice versa. But João Pedro does look, I'm not going to say nailed, but he looks certain to start, I think. I haven't changed him from my team, and I don't think I plan on changing him. He's not somebody you want to bet against with him being just over 50% owned. That if you bet against him, it could massively backfire and put you on the back foot at the start of the season. So he's probably somebody that I certainly don't look to be changing come next week or the end of this week. Let's just quickly move on to the bench. So on the bench, we've got Caoimhin Kelleher. Like I said, I think he rotates quite nicely, to be fair, with Brighton and Verbruggen. Kelleher's start, it's so-so. It's not too bad, really. But I don't plan on starting him in this first game week. He will come in nicely when Verbruggen has Manchester City at home in game week 3. As Kelleher plays Sunderland away. So I think that's a nice rotation, but I'm still open to the Dubravka from Burnley, as he's only 4 million. I'm still open to that if I need to raise those 0.5 million funds to put into another area of my team. Then somebody who hasn't moved from this position, the bench, but hasn't been out my team through all the build-up to next week, is Elliot Anderson, because of his price at 5.5 and because of the defensive contribution points that he can get. I think he's going to be a nice little enabler, especially when you've got some players maybe injured or that you don't fancy in a game week. He's a nice player to bring in, and hopefully somebody that can just sort of tick over pretty well as a defensive contributions monster from the midfield. That's my plan with him. I can't see him going anywhere, really. Although, maybe for you guys, Reinders at Man City has scored 2 goals this weekend, and it looked pretty sharp when he came on in pre-season, and he is only 5.5. So you might have somebody there for Man City who has a bit of attacking threat. It's just whether you can guarantee the minutes. With Elliot Anderson, you can guarantee the minutes. And then another new addition from the other draft, but Richards. Again, defensive contributions at the forefront here. Only 4.5 million, but I just think he's better than who I had there, and it was Konza, who isn't great for defensive contributions. The Villa defence, it's okay at best. You could say the same about the Crystal Palace defence, but I just think they look really sharp. They've just beaten Liverpool on penalties, but they've just beaten them in the Community Shield final. I do think they look really good heading into the new season. And like I say, with the defensive contributions, potential for clean sheets, I think he could be one of the best 4.5 defenders that you could possibly get. So he'll wait to come in because he has Chelsea away in the opening fixture, which I don't completely like. But he's there and he'll play probably more often than not, I think, for my team if I keep him in for the many weeks ahead. And then finally, I've still stuck with Joe Rodon. He still continues to start game after game. And I think I can't see that changing for next week at the start of the new season. So he's my 4 million enabler. They've got a nice fixture to start with, although he's on my bench. Everton at home. And basically the whole defence is there. The whole bench is set up there for a nice bench boost if I decide to activate that as well. Looking at that lineup, I've seen worse bench boosts. So if I decide to activate it last minute, which is a real possibility, I've got the bench there to do it. Whether I do it or not yet remains to be seen, but I still want to keep it an option. Just because I don't think it's something that I want to have to worry about later on in the season, or certainly like 8 game weeks in. I don't want to have to worry too much of having a solid bench. Maybe you could drop one of the, your third bench slot player just to create funds in another part of the team. That's all I'm looking at basically. So thank you for joining me for the latest draft. Next week we'll obviously have the final draft and a few more videos in anticipation for the start of the Premier League season, which is this Friday now, all very close. So please, if it did help you, hit the like button and join the journey. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. I would really appreciate it. But until next time, guys, I'll see you.